Okay, so the warm light that is coming will all be kind of this warmer blue green, right? Something with a little bit of a warmer color. The cooler shadows will need to be the aqua plus probably something a little bit darker. Now, if the warmer colors I'm using probably more of a yellow green, then that would mean that the cool colors might be to add the complement to the light source, which would be violet. So I might start adding some violet shadows in here a little bit, which is fine with me. It works pretty good. I got a little gouache over here that I'm using on my palette. I don't know if you're able to see. No, I guess this is probably off screen, but I got a little violet. I'll put a little up here. You can kind of see on my palette up top here. It's this kind of blue, but aqua with a little bit of violet in it, which will cool it down and act as the complement to the warmer lights. So let's try that. See how that looks. I don't want it to be purple. But it's going to be about really bringing out these sort of silhouettes casted by the gems. I'm not even sure how perfectly accurate it just needs to be. It just needs to kind of give the implication that there's a form there. So little bits of shadow, little bits of shadow. And this was actually very close to the same color that I used to draw with my watercolor pencil. So what little bit of line work is falling underneath here is actually going to blend right in with these shadows. So I think it's going to work pretty nice. So it's just sort of bringing out the forms here. There's a lot of little subtle values that will be in here though. And if the light is coming from the lower right, then I'm pretty much thinking that the skull is going to probably cast some shadow over here. Sorry if I'm talking a little quieter. It's a bit on the late side for a Sunday night, so a lot of the family has gone to bed, so I'm sneaking in some time here, but trying to keep it down a little bit. I'm in my own studio here, but you know, it's late, so. Now I am using gouache, so what that means is I started thin, transparently, watering things down, but I'm also starting to thicken things up as I'm working towards the finish. And I think ultimately I'll get thicker and thicker and get closer to like opaque painting by the time I'm done. But I am sort of transparent at the moment. Again, the chat's open if you want to say hello. Hope you're having a good week wherever you're at. I've got a little bit of these kind of crooked teeth here, but chipped away. I can't imagine too many pirates had great dental plans. Probably some hideous mouths being at sea for months at a time with hardly any food. And so like last time, I'm continuing to use my Series 7 Winsor Newton watercolor brush. One of the best ones, I think. Pound for pound, dollar for dollar. There's great brushes out there, but this is a powerful everyday brush to use. And I'm creating now the illusion of this eye patch, right? So it's got to feel a little different, a little bigger maybe than the whole of the skull. Light's going to hit a little differently on it. I think, you know, I always try not to add black unless I absolutely have to, because as what we know about black is that adding black to your color really neutralizes it, takes the saturation out. That if you can mix cool complements, that's probably the better way to do it. There's a couple of ones that are close to black, which are very good, like Payne's Gray is very good. Gives you a pretty rich, it's actually a blue. But I need a little bit more darkness into the socket. Again, the thing I'm worried about with gouache, or not worried about, but paying attention to is that I can't layer with gouache in quite the same way that you would layer with other mediums. It's a water-based, water-soluble medium, and it's very sensitive to water. So as you continue to paint on it, if you add water again, as you can see here, I'm lifting some of that water back up, lifting that paint back up, so you can't layer like, say, the way you would with acrylic, because it doesn't dry. And no matter how dry it is with gouache, if you get it wet again, you can bring it back up. Now that could be a tool, that could be an asset. I think this is why a lot of oil painters, when they have to do something quicker, they need a medium that's a little more soluble and flexible and stays wet or is adjustable. And that's exactly what gouache is like. You can work it and work it and rework it. And so I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I add anything more. I got lots of other areas to work on. I don't want to get too hung up here. The other thing that's kind of interesting that will be different about this is that this is supposed to look like metal. So unlike, say, things that might be made out of different materials that you're painting, this all has to read like it's very heavy or solid. I'll tell you what I mean. Like, for instance, right here, I am painting like part of this head wrap, right, that's going around. In real life, this would have been made out of probably cloth of some sort, right? Soak up the sweat or the ocean. But here, because it's a sculpture, it's sculpted to look like that material, but it's really made out of something very heavy. And that's going to change a bit of the way that it reads. Okay. So my snake up here is going to have some shadow casted on it. All right. So just working up these little shadow bits here. Make this thing have some more dimension and pop out. And the depth of the shadow is really going to tell you what the relief is, right? And since this is supposed to look like it's a relief, some areas of the shadows might be standing out more, and some areas it might be standing out a little bit less. So we're getting some pretty good relief there. Everything's going to have a shadow, so even the edge here will cast a shadow on the snake that is passing behind. Now this shadow is going to bend, right? Because the edge of the snake is wrapping from behind and then coming forward. Oh, that looks pretty good. Kind of digging that. Let's try it again down here. Chat's open. If you want to say hello, I invite it. I also want to invite you all to the Discord for my stream here, which you can see down below in my profile. There's a link to the Discord channel. Feel free to join up. You can leave me a message there. I try to post my stream schedule, tidbits of information, but I also provide feedback. If you post something and join the Discord, and you're working on some art and you want some feedback, I'll make some time to give you some feedback. And I like feedback as well. So if you have some ideas for the stream or anything you'd like to see or talk about, you can leave me a message there. All right, so that's good. It's looking pretty tasty. Working our way around here, trying to hit up all these shadows. Let's do one over here. This is my rum bottle over here. I'm paying some attention to how big the shadow is, depending on how much relief I think it needs. I think these things can change too. Like part of the bottle might look like it's behind all this stuff, but then it's leaning and coming forward a little bit, so it starts to get more relief as it moves forward. So the shadow might change its depth. Now I'm just kind of changing this depth impromptu. I have nothing I'm looking at. This is all just out of imagination and envisioning what I might want. I'm picturing these gems are probably right in the front here are casting some shadows. You know, it's funny, these little light, low lit shadow lights remind me of like the opening sequence there of Pinocchio, the original animation too, with Geppetto's workshop there and all those wonderful kind of candlelight that illuminated all those clocks on the wall. That is some of my favorite background painting. So if you're an animation fan, you know what I'm talking about. Gorgeous. So giving a little bit of relief to that bottle. How about on the snake here? Let's put some shadow here. I kind of like this snake element because, well, one, snakes are cool, but it also gives an element of something round with this kind of square, boxy looking shape. It kind of breaks up the composition a little bit. Oh, hey, welcome in, Noda. Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. I hope you're having a good evening. Thanks for joining up. Hope you're working on something fun yourself. Got to make time for our passions, even if it's a late at night. I do a lot of art during the week too, but this is sort of my relaxed time. In addition to my own projects, I'm also an educator, so I I teach, and so I'm around art a lot. But I like this time because I kind of feel like this is a chance for me just to kind of have fun and relax on a more casual tip. So we were working on the snake over here. Noda, I hope you're having a good one. You working on something there? Got something cooking over there? All right, so I think this is the thickness of the wood panel here on the side. So I'm going to create a little bit of shadow here because this will just be in shadow. I think with, these shadows aren't going to take much time to really start working, I think. If you get the values right, they're going to really make this thing pop. So I got to carefully position them and get all the right edges turning away and going into shadow. Okay, so sorry if I'm mumbling a little bit tonight. I'm like I was mentioning earlier, I'm trying to keep it down. It's a little bit late when I'm streaming this time, so I don't want to wake up the house. A little bit of the earring there. You got it, Noda. Exactly. That's exactly what this is. We've done 2 streams on this design so far. First was the drawing, and then last time we blocked in a wash of this kind of aqua tint to it, which is actually supposed to be like an aged bronze. But if it's near a lot of water, near the ocean perhaps, then bronze with a lot of moisture can get that kind of aqua look to it, right? So that'll not only make it look older, but it will also imply maybe the ocean, which I'm assuming, given the subject matter, this might imply kind of a marine layer quality to it. But yeah, you got it, Noda. Exactly. We're doing something a little different with this one, just having some fun. Trying new design challenges. Being an illustrator is one of the fun things about being an illustrator is that every job is a different challenge, a different solution, a different problem. And it's neat to be a problem solver, to try to find a solution that will do the job of what you're after. Sometimes you're painting a sign, sometimes you're creating a character, sometimes you're doing a book cover. It's like every job is something unique and special. So this one we're doing something that's a non-living thing, but that implies some storytelling in it. Thanks. You do you. Thank you very much. You do you too. What are you working on? You got anything exciting? You're just chilling here on this this Sunday night. All right. So some of this skull back here is, this area is called the maxilla, and part of the maxilla is gonna be going into shadow now, right? So maybe kind of implying a little sense of dimension to the teeth. Just these little suggestion of shadows. But some of this obviously is gonna drop back into shadow pretty quick. You know, truth be told, these are probably better teeth than most pirates would have had. There's a full set here. These kind of flatten out here. So the teeth are getting some dimension to them, but I'm going to have to put some of these in shadow because I don't think there would be nearly this much light on these teeth over here. So these are probably all dropping into shadow back here. With now determining that the light source is coming from below, I think most of this over here is going to be in shadow. But I need a little bit of light just so I don't lose the structure completely. Sides of the face are going to change. A little bit of shadows there. Just little bits of shadow. Very careful work. I realize I'm not being super informative here. I'm doing very concentrated work. Side of the nose. Oh yeah, that's looking better. Looking a little better. I think the around the base of the teeth here, there might be a little more. A little lip. Those tiny little edges there around those skulls make those pop a little better. All right. And again, I can lift that out with gouache, but just a little bit at a time. I think the key I think at this stage, I don't want to get too focused on one thing, right? I want to keep moving, keep moving. You don't want to make any fine decisions until you've really put things where they need to be everywhere. Then you can start zeroing in on the details. Oh, great. You're sketching too. Sorry, I was looking away a little bit. I was actually doing some sketching. Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, I love drawing skulls always. Oh, hey, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad you checked it out. Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because actually right now I'm teaching a class on facial anatomy, so maybe that had something to do with my inspiration too. I've been drawing a lot of skulls lately, and um, but you know when you're teaching, a lot of times you have to teach more of the fundamental stuff, so it's not as creative, but I still have to find a way to get my creative on, as you know. um, so yeah, I'd love to see your skulls, see what you've been working on. Noda, if you haven't joined my Discord channel there, you can check me out, post some stuff there. Be glad to check out the work and see what you're doing. All right, so we've got the sword here. Okay, so this is some pretty detailed work. I don't know if you guys can see as well in there, but this is sort of the protecting the hands on the sword. I don't even know what the heck that part is called. I need to brushing up on my sword construction, but this is sort of protecting the hand in a knife or sword fight. So this kind of thing, shield, is going to probably put a lot of this handle in shadow behind it, especially if we're doing the light from below thing. So if we're doing that, then I think a lot of this handle, unfortunately, is going to drift back into shadow. And I'm putting, these are my coins down below, so I'm trying to get some shadows from these guys. What else we got here? Bits of shadow. I think I have too much water. I gotta keep a little drier brush here. Kind of show you up here on the right. This is a palette paper, so you can see it beads up quite a bit, but I think I'm still very watery and I need a little drier. Now again, I'm doing something that is a sculpture of these items. These are not supposed to be like paper or metal or coins. It's all made out of metal, right? So really, it doesn't have any transparency to it. It's a sculpture. I think some of this, so this will be in shadow, and then this will be in shadow. I could have probably spent more time figuring out exact shadows in the drawing, but I'm kind of winging it. You know, this isn't for anything other than me, but for stream. But on sign off, you know, if I were doing this for a client, I would probably do an extra set of studies that would just be light and darks or color studies, just to kind of make it very clear to your client or to my client that what it's going to look like before you do the final. By the time you go into the final, you don't want to be doing any guesswork. Not when it's a client work. Unless maybe you're concepting. I guess if you're concepting, then nobody has any idea of really what it's supposed to be. But if you're doing illustration work, you're producing camera-ready final art. That is the final art. So you really got to make that clear. Drop a little more shadow in here. Now, one thing I might do to cheat on this a little bit, just to make that skull pop out a little bit more, I definitely might make the highlights a little brighter on this face. Maybe not as bright in some of these other places, so that it does pop out a little bit. So that's popping back there. I realize I'm talking so quiet and calm and controlled. I guess it's just the nature of this kind of painting. A lot of times I'm working looser and sketching, so. But the detail work, I notice I talk less, so maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. These coins. All right, so the map is behind here. So this is where I'm getting into like what's behind what. Okay, so the map is back here. The sword is here. Don't sweat the technique. It's funny, I'm listening to this. Eric B. Rakim. This is old school rap. I'm old school. I love old school rap. Don't sweat the technique. But isn't that why we're watching? Isn't that why we're doing this? Because we are sweating the technique? Because we care about the technique. Because we're artists. All right. Hey, thanks for the follow, Noda. Appreciate it. I'm gonna look for you. I'd love to see those skulls you're drawing. Okay, so now I'm getting into these leaves here, right? So that I have these leaves kind of passing in front. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to put this leaf here, which means in order to make the leaf pop out, it has to have some shadow. So I'll give it a little bit of shadow here. And this leaf would have a little shadow, and this leaf would come right on front of the map here. That would have a little shadow, and then maybe a little shadow here. All right, so let's see. All right, so this thing is turning a little bit here, right? Light's coming from below. If it hits this thing, it's going to put this side into shadow a little bit, right? So I'm going to throw some shade over here just to make this thing. Now, I originally had like a vine here, but I'm not sure I dig that. I don't know what real good that is. Instead, I'm going to bring out some of the map back in here. Hope you guys are getting some of this detail in here. It's pretty fine. I did zoom in a little bit from the first stream on this one, just to try to give a little bit more. So I got the map back in here. Oh yeah, I haven't heard this in a while. Okay, so this is probably going to count. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into this. We've got some overlapping going on in here. So the map is there, casting a shadow on that little bit of map on the inside. And then, of course, starting to cast a shadow over here, but it disappears. Okay. This is where painting is really becoming just straight up rendering. You're just doing it with a wet medium instead of with a pencil. You're establishing all the lights and shadows. Okay, I got to get something a little bit thicker and denser back in there. I think that's one of the interesting things about gouache too. Gouache is really almost like a liquid pastel. You could think of it that way. It's opaque like a pastel, so you can thin it out with water, but I don't know if the results are as good. You might as well use watercolor if you're going to go transparent. But it does have this ability to flow around like paint, but it dries. You want it to dry opaque, and it has this real flat quality, almost like a chalk or a pastel. Gouache is fascinating stuff. I think it's one of the coolest mediums to paint with for graphic purposes. which is why I like to use it, not in my oil painting and stuff that I'm doing for gallery and selling oil paintings and selling that kind of art, but for graphic art, I think it's really cool because it also has this really interesting edge quality. It dries very flat, and that can be a really interesting look. It's like it's painting, but it has a little bit of a graphic edge to it. I like it. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I like it. But all mediums have their advantages and disadvantages and reasons why you use them. And I think that's the key, is you got to find the medium that does what you want to do. Okay, so the light's coming from below. Boom, it's hitting in here. It's hitting on the map. It's hitting on the sword. It's casting a shadow of the sword on this little plane up here. Then my map is casting a shadow up here. This is the edge. The lip. This is the inside lip of the sign. So here's the inside lip, here's the facing lip. There will be a difference in the way that those land, so I think I'll need to tone this back. But I don't think I want to do it with shadow. I just want to do it with a little bit of darker tone. Here's that edge too. But this line, this edge down here, will be in shadow. Now I wanted my coins, again, this has kind of got that relief thing, and I want the coins to kind of pop. These are like kind of three-dimensional little still life objects that are coming out, right? So sometimes they're behind the lip, and sometimes they're actually sitting on the lip. So like these gems are like on the lip. These coins are on the lip, but the bottle is sort of behind the lip. The snake's in front of it. So it's just kind of push-pull dimensional kind of quality here. So let's keep working. Let's keep it going. Keep it going. Got some coins. This is the shadow of this lip, which is again going to be in shadow, which is, I realize, a little redundant. Sorry, I realize that when I I do something I'm concentrating on, sometimes we talk gibberish. This is right about the time I tell my son, put down the controller and talk to me. I'm talking to you. Listen to your father. Because, man, it is just really hard to do two things at one time. I've had a little bit of experience with this just from teaching. It's one of the things, if you ever do become a teacher or an educator, that it's you have to learn to kind of be able to do what it is that you're talking about while you're talking about it, i.e. streaming. But it's very similar to teaching too. Give me 1 second here. I'm back. I thought I heard something. Again, we're doing the late show. But I wanted to get back out here for a bit. Cool. I am definitely getting some vibes. So there's our map, kind of tucked back in there. Some coins. The coins are probably going to have a little bit of shading on them as well. I need to put a little shadow on this snake here. But I have to tell you, one thing when you work with gouache, you realize is it hits this point when you've got way too much water. And then you just it's like you lose control with too much water. Unlike watercolor, gouache is different. Let's soften this up here. Okay. Hey, Noda. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you coming by, saying hi. Have a good evening. And have a good week. Hope I catch you out here again sometime. So this snake is going to cast a shadow here. You get enough water on here and even gouache will act like a watercolor. It will follow where the water goes. So that's a little bit of a thing there. So this is a little bit of the cloth. So I think somewhere in here I will need to come in with some opaque white to really make this pop out. You can see here that with this little bit of leftover pencil sketching, the darkness of it is not helping it come forward, right? It's getting tough to know what's in front, what's behind. So I'm establishing the shadows here on the side, which is going to give it some dimension. But I will need some highlight to really make that work. Okay, let's get some shadows up top. I think we're in about an hour, so I'm going to keep this one on the shorter side tonight. I don't think I'm going to probably get as far as I had hoped, but that's all right. We got time. Many more nights to stream. But I'm going to throw some shadow up here where the hat is casting a shadow there. I have a little bit of a leaf behind here, so I don't know. Is that going to catch some light? I'm going to leave it there for the moment, work in a little bit of these dark edges right there. But my hat has to cast some shadows. So let's work in a little more shadows up top. This is now the top of the sign. That actually is where the chain would attach. It'll help that edge come forward. So I'm getting a little shadow up here. I said I was going to leave the chain a different color. Now, I don't even know if I'm going to render it. I think leaving the chain as a drawing would just imply that this is kind of a design, which is all I really wanted to do. So I'm not doing any scenic trickery or lighting trickery to really make it blend into some space. It's just the sign. So as presented here on this flat piece of paper, but looking dimensional. Now this is interesting over here. This snake is going to have light on it. It's definitely going to be casting this shadow. So I think I'm going to have to pop this into shadow a little bit. Again, this is where like some knowledge of perspective is good. I used to teach a lot of perspective, and one of the nice parts about dealing with perspective a lot is you're very fresh about like casting shadows in perspective. It really helps the more you draw of any kind, it adds to your knowledge, and sometimes it comes back to help you. You know, I don't do a ton of like architectural landscape perspective stuff. At least I haven't for a while. But having been around it so much, just even as an educator, it really keeps it fresh. Those perspective principles can get away from you if you don't do them for a while. Okay, coins are there. I like this. This is looking cool. I'm having fun. So I got my coins in there. It's the top of my coins there. Probably give that a little pass of light. it's looking tasty. Digging it. Let's do a little more shadow up here on the side of the nose. I need to make this skull curve and twist a little bit. And we have the brow a little bit above the skull. So got my gems down here, which I think they're popping pretty good. These are going to be an interesting render to get these to look kind of like they have light coming through them. I mean, you don't want to imply light if you're adding too many shadows. So it becomes a little bit of a tricky to make them look transparent because they'll have a little bits of shadow behind. Okay. Well, this has been good. It's been a good start. I've got a lot of subtle shadows worked in here. Let me do a couple more over here just to really bring in the dimension of this hat. A couple of these key shadows are really going to make the hat pop. That's the lip of the sign. I think I'll end up spending a little more time over here next time, because we just getting cracking in over here, and I realize there's a lot of little shadows in here to work, and I'm gonna get them all in one pass, you know, or I'm gonna only do shadows first. So take my time, do it right. Take your time, do it right, we can do it, baby. All right, well, I think some fresh eyes looking at these shadows will help next time. Got a good start though, and it'll give me a chance to look at it for a bit and figure out plan of attack.